story of legal gun ownership among Black Americans is as combustible as it is complex. And some have contended that modern gun control begins not with school shootings, but with the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, who in May of 1967 legally entered the California State House brandishing shotguns and pistols to protest a bill proposed specifically to restrict their gun rights. The visual of legally armed Black revolutionaries prompted then Governor Ronald Reagan to sign the bill into law, forbidding public carrying of loaded firearms. That and other incidents of the era prompted lawmakers to pass the first national gun control legislation of the post-war era, launching the gun debate as we know it, a debate that dogged the Obama administration, where sales exploded under the right wing's assumption that ownership would be restricted. But NBC News has found that it is African Americans that are now increasingly taking up legal arms in the Trump era. While the buyers are diverse in age and gender, the reasoning is singular. They don't trust the Trump administration to protect them from the rise of white supremacist aggression that we've seen in the past year. Joining me now from St. Louis is Paul Berry, who ran for Congress as a Republican in 2016. He is now host of Show Me Politics TV. You have been an advocate for this, Paul. Tell me why and what you think is achieved by Blacks buying and owning more guns.
Hey, good morning to you and happy Sunday, Reverend Sharpton.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to clarify, and this is sort of a misconception, that I'm not actually for arming people. What I do believe is that regardless of who you are, race, creed, zip code, or financial background, that you have access to the United States Constitution. Now, currently in the Constitution, the Second Amendment provides that a person may bear arms. My position's always been simple. You should not be fearful as an African American to open carry, concealed carry, or own a gun, just like in anywhere else in America. And I believe that your constitutional rights should not be watered down like ordering a pizza from your local pizza place. So for myself, you know, if you support the First Amendment right to protest, you have to protect the Second Amendment right. And if you support the right to a jury trial, you got to support the right to civil rights. So for myself, it's open carry, concealed carry, no carry. Every citizen should have an equal opportunity to access. And where I get frustrated, Reverend, is that when we have politicians that lay on the congressional floor yelling no buy, to me, what we have to do is we have to talk about the real issues, and the real issue is illegal gun ownership. But
I think that some that lay on the floor yelling no buy also are saying that across the board, and they're not concerned about just telling Blacks not to be able to have the same constitutional rights as others, but to really deal with the fact of gun ownership. But the other aspect of this, and I agree we must have equal execution of our constitutional rights, but let's be serious, Paul. Blacks riding around with guns, given the racial dynamics, even with law enforcement, is a lot different than other Americans. And aren't we also setting up situations that could lead to more shootings? Oh, he had a gun, I felt he was going to shoot. The danger of that, I think, has to be, enter this conversation, because we can't act like everyone is equally treated when they're viewed even by law enforcement if they're carrying a weapon.
Well, and what you said was very articulate, and my response is this. If you have a situation where we have two paths we can take here, Reverend. Path A is the path of the shadows, that we're going to live in the shadows of the Constitution, and we're not going to express our rights as of others. And the second path is we're going to have sunshine, we're going to have light, and we're going to respect the fact that we have these constitutional rights. You know, in St. Louis, my hometown, we have the highest toddler by death rates regarding toddlers. But you know why that comes, why that happens, and why it's not happening in rural America? Because people in rural America are teaching their children firearm safety. Here in these urban areas, they say if you teach somebody how to be safe with a gun, that you're supporting gun ownership. And I don't agree with that.
But I think you're being very articulate in your answer, but you're not addressing what I'm saying, because let's put the sunlight on. The sunlight says that people are treated differently, that are gun owners based on who they are. So I'm not saying operate in the shade. I'm saying that how people relate to people that own guns are shady depending on their skin texture and depending on who they are, and in some cases even whether they're Muslim or not. So if we're going to put the sunlight on, put the sunlight on the disparities that plays into that. If I teach my child one thing, it is not the same as another American teaching their child, just from the optics of who has the gun.
Well, how do you address the Reverend, respectfully, how do you address the disparities if we're going to say all black people aren't going to own guns?
No,
because to me it sounds like they were taking our gun.
Maybe by dealing with gun control for everybody, since you seemingly can't control the ending of racial disparities. Let me tell you, Paul, what bothers me. Let me show you a clip of what a minister said that is not what you're saying, but this is the kinds of things that we're talking about, that I'm concerned about.
God took judgment several times. He's told his people to protect yourselves. He told them to look out for the enemy. So we have no problem with that when people come and say, oh, the church supposed to be a person. Like, no, the God that I serve was a God of wrath, vengeance, protection, watching out for his own.
So that's the kind of thing that bothers me. I've been a follower of Martin Luther King's ideology all my life, mentored by Jesse Jackson, Y.T. Walker. So I believe in a saving America's soul, not that we ought to be the ones with vengeance. And you have people out here actually preaching, get a gun, have vengeance and all, which I understand anger. I understand fear. I understand self-protection as we see these militia groups rising. But I also understand we're not playing on an even playing field. So even if you don't have the commitment to nonviolence that I have, you've got to have the reality of that you are treated differently, and are we setting people up for more danger, more situations like we've seen?
Well, and what I believe in this situation, what we need to do as a people is have an honest conversation. So if I carry a gun on my hip inside a Walmart in the state of Missouri as a practicing bail bondsman, do I get a couple eye cuts? Yeah. But the bottom line is this. We're going to make sure that we have the same constitutional rights as all others, and to say that we're going to restrict them for everybody, we're not being realistic in the time of who our president is, who our Congress is. So what are we going to do, Al Sharpton? Are we going to sit there and wait, okay, for 8 years or however long you think before there's another chance at a different administration? Or because St. Louis can't wait. Right now, we are the #1 murder capital of the United States. We rank higher than Honduras in murders per capita.
You also where we had Ferguson, where there wasn't a gun. You also where there have been other police shootings. I'm not talking about waiting. I'm talking about dealing right now, and let's not wait for them to one day say that we have equal constitutional rights when we're not protected under the present laws now without guns. Imagine if we had more of us with guns. Let's continue this debate in the future. I thank you for coming on, though. You're a very good guest. Thank you, Paul Barry.
I thank you, too. Hey, happy Sunday. My mother's from Chicago says hello.
Tell her hello from me.